I literally get hundreds to thousands of resumes when I have an open role. I will not even open 95% of them. And I feel guilty about that, saying that, but AI will say none of these people matter. When I build a requisition and then subsequently create a job posting for an opportunity, I already have a person in mind. I already know who I want to hire.
Welcome back to Signal. Today we're talking about applying for jobs, because even though there are millions of open roles, a lot of people feel like it's harder than ever to actually get hired. We want to break down what's changed and what still works. But first, dear Stephen, number one, congrats on your MBA. And number two, how are you doing?
Great. And it was great seeing you last week visiting Prague, and I had the opportunity to see you in person. It was a great meetup, and we had a good time, I think. And it's always good to see your friends in person versus over the network. Yeah. Well, last week was a great. We were in Prague for, as you know, for about 4 days, and then my wife and I went to Vienna for 4 days. I have to tell you, both cities are beautiful. Both cities are lovely. However, I would argue Prague for me, was a little bit better in the sense that I felt like I could understand the sections and neighborhoods much easier. The walkability, it felt better for me. Although I'd say Vienna is pretty walkable. Tons of great parks in Vienna, tons of amazing museums and gorgeous buildings. It's like opulence on top of opulence. So both visually stunning. Christmas markets. So been to both. Been to both cities at the same time, basically in the same week. I felt better in Prague. I felt like the Christmas markets were just like more vibrant. I'd go to the ones over in Vienna. They were literally a madhouse. It was hard to move between people. I'm not to be unfair to Vienna. I did not try the Glühwein in Vienna. I tried the Glühwein with you in Prague, and I really enjoyed that. It was strong. You could really taste the alcohol up front, but it was quite good.
It had a kick to it, absolutely.
Look, and by the way, across the board, the food, the sights, the scenes, amazing in both cities.
Yeah, it's Vienna, I think, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's definitely one of the livable cities, the best cities in Europe.
Yes.
They have a very interesting project with affordable housing. You have an easier time finding an apartment in Vienna compared to, by a million compared to other larger German cities, European cities. So yeah, Vienna was fun. I've been there a couple times. We played in Vienna when I was with the Leipzig Kings in 23, and then I also did like 2 basketball tournaments when I was a teenager. There, they always do one around Easter where the whole city is playing basketball. It's pretty exciting. But yeah, all right. Let's get into what the job market is and what it used to be. But first, let's start with the bigger picture. Because if you've applied for a job recently, you probably felt it. Something about the process just feels harder than it used to. On paper, the job market doesn't look terrible. There are still millions of open roles, but in reality, a lot of candidates feel stuck sending applications and rarely hearing back. The big reason for that is how hiring works now. For most companies, the first person reviewing your application isn't a recruiter, it's a software. And at the same time, remote work has widened the talent pool, turning what used to be dozens of applicants into hundreds. So before we talk about what actually works, we have to understand this shift because the job market itself has fundamentally changed. So the job I'm in now, I've been in for about a year. It's a remote job as well. And I would never go back to working in an office if I have to. But you've obviously been in the corporate world in a job for a little longer than I have. How have you seen that transition from more local-based roles to this remote job market opening up all over the world influence how companies hire and sort of what the employee side, how that has changed ever since remote jobs became a thing all over the world?
If I go back to the aughts and teens of the 2000s, I would argue that I saw the shift happen around mid-2000, like the latter 2000s, like 2015-ish kind of thing, 2010 to 2018 kind of thing. It was still like people were, posting positions that were anchored towards regional headquarters or, the centralized headquarters. or regional, we'll call regional satellite campuses, or the central headquarters of a company. In the tech sector specifically, you kind of have a population of tech workers, a very large population on the West Coast, centered around San Francisco, San Jose, Palo Alto, right? With a lot of big companies, tons of investors, and tons of startups and established firms there, historically established firms there, like the largest of, I'm talking about HP, HPE, that is an example. And then, of course, all the FANG companies like Facebook and Netflix. And then over in Google, of course, let's not forget Google. And then, of course, you have also, let's not neglect Washington, right? So with
Hmm.
Seattle, obviously a huge tech scene with Amazon and others. And then, of course, the East Coast. Lots of scientific research, but also a lot of tech and science together in the East Coast. And I mean, I spent most of my life living in the Boston area, of which that band around Boston, which we call 128 and even now 495, which are the major roadways in 95. These are the areas in which you see the largest density of technology and scientific type companies, a lot of biotechs now, of course, in the last 2 decades. So huge amount of focus on the two sides of the country. And when you looked at the positions that were being hired for, whether they be engineering roles or marketing roles or even some sales roles, they're going to anchor into those types of locations. And of course, in a sales world, you're going to have coverage across a map. You're not going to have it just anchored into a specific location, but you might have like sales leadership and the orbit of the sales leadership team in Boston or in San Francisco, like the CRO or chief commercial officers, right? So when you looked at jobs back in, say, the early 2000s into the 2010 to 2020 timeframe, you're going to see a lot more that must be in this location, and that's really tied to efficiency, responsibility, and accountability of those roles. And I think that if you just like go even up a higher level, that managers and management leadership sometimes, if we go back decades, have this impression that if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. Okay. And I had a great scenario, great lesson was learned by one of the folks who reported to me. They lived in the mid-Atlantic down in the North Carolina below DC area. And they would say to me, well, look, Stephen, you're near corporate. You get invited to the meetings. You get asked in and you're a part of the decision making, your seat at the table. I live in the mid-Atlantic and I'm out of sight, out of mind. So this is a true state. I think at that point in time, this was very much a true statement. And it was to be frank, look, fast forward, a complete disadvantage to any company. If you're ignoring talent that's outside of the orbit of the corporate headquarters or a large regional satellite office, you are
Hmm.
ignoring the opportunity to innovate, to create,
Hmm.
to instigate, to build and incubate new ideas. That person came up with that observation because they weren't being asked to meetings, they weren't being included in initiatives and projects, they weren't at the tip of the tongue of the people who sat closest to the action. Now flash forward, pandemic, late 2000s into the pandemic time period, into where we are today in 2025 and beyond. It doesn't matter where you are. If you have the right skills, if you have the right answers, the ideas, you're going to be leveraged. And workers should feel advantaged at this point, that it doesn't matter where they sit, and
Yeah.
companies should be thankful that they have access to talent in every geography across the globe. And I always had this view as a manager and as a leader, that I didn't care where the person sat. I cared about the skills, their aptitude, their capabilities, etc. And it didn't matter if they were in Montreal or if they were in the Bay Area or if they were in Florida or if they were in Berlin. It didn't matter where these resources were. I was tapping into a knowledge network that was feeding new ideas and generating outcomes. That's all I cared about. And I
Yeah.
think this is the modern leadership mindset today. But go back 10 years ago, I think we were in the Stone Age.
Yeah, and I had a conversation not too long ago with my mom because I think Germany is different. What I think is very interesting and very telling about this development with remote work and just how the job market has changed is the bandwidth of jobs that are now being worked from as a remote job than before. Like one of my old bosses at my previous company said, I've been a developer and working remotely for 25 years. That's just how it has been. But I had a conversation with my mom because she was visiting me here in Leipzig, and I was able to just take a couple of days off without having to take any PTO or like just lie to my bosses or whatever. I just was able to, and my mom said, "Well, all of this wouldn't have worked for me because in Germany we used to have, and in a lot of parts still do, a sort of default setting of distrust towards your employees, where you just, as a boss, you constantly are in the mode, who is screwing me over? And how do I control them the best to make sure that ain't happening, or I catch them in the act, sort of thing. And after COVID, there was a push to get people back into offices, and every sort of company now is starting to roll out the office policy again, 4 days a week, mandatory at the
Hmm.
office. Where I've heard some people say, "Well, remote just doesn't work for us," and then I heard others that are sort of pro remote jobs are saying, well, the investors that own all the big office buildings are losing money and trying to get companies back into it because companies are figuring out that we can save thousands of dollars every single month by saving rent and all utilities and just have people work remotely, and whatever you might be losing in efficiency
You know,
or
not only are you going to slash the costs on leases, but you're
mhm,
also going to shift the liability of the insurance of from a central location to a remote worker who is liable for their own confinement,
which
their
they're
their
not in
domicile.
Germany though. If
Okay.
I get up from my desk and trip and break my ankle, then the insurance of my employer. But we're socialists in Germany, you know. That's
Right.
just the
Yeah.
point.
In the U.S., it would be you would be liable for that within your home, but we have seen this shedding of leases and real estate assets because it does come at a high overhead and expense. I mean, I work in an organization of about 125 people in our marketing team across the globe. I think all of them are remote. Even our CMO
Yeah,
is remote.
yeah,
And that's not to say that every part of our company is remote because we have manufacturing, we have certain central facilities in which we have certain operations that require us to be in person because we're a networking infrastructure company. We make products, we make physical products as well as software. But by and large, the DNA of our how we make up our organization, it's remote.
yeah. I think you said it. The remote job and now being able to sort of look for jobs globally is a good thing for both sides, for the employer and for the employee. Because I, as a German, as you said, if I have the right skills, if I have the right answers, if I maybe even have a network, I can get a high paying job in the U.S. because I can work remotely. It's funny you said it because in Germany, a lot of the like the medium-sized companies, family-run businesses that are having a hard time in the current economy always like to have the easy out sort of reasoning for their issues, for their struggles, being I can't find talent.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
if you look at what sort of industry those companies are in that are using this argument to sort of defend their shortcomings as a company, it's usually something that has to be done physically, like the trades or even
Right.
some sort of manufacturing.
Yeah.
I've never heard a marketing company say sometimes you might have a hard time finding your chief of marketing or whatever you're looking for, but I don't think you have a hard time finding talent if you utilize that. There's so many ways and possibilities to find talent and work with them remotely. Like for example, in my last company, we hired I think 3 people that worked outside of Europe. I googled and I was like, how can we employ them? First thing, remote.com, where you just
Yeah.
paid them 500
Yeah.
bucks a month and they
That's
hired them
right.
for you.
That's
So
right.
the abilities has changed. One small thing I want to talk to you about, especially for younger people, as sort of, and I want to make this a longer episode with you at some point, but the rise of AI implementation in companies has, on the same side, led to entry level jobs being slashed in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways. Like analysts, junior positions that you might get at companies are being cut down because a lot of that work is being done by AI. And I think those are, that's how you get your foot in the door. That's how you can start a career. But I think a lot of the jobs in a larger variety of companies and industries that are doable are usually those somewhat entry level jobs where your progress, the work you do is pretty, you have an easier time to sort of rate someone on if they did a good job or not. As we see AI implementation in the workforce, have you seen that change in your direct network? How losing those entry level jobs is given especially young people a harder time getting into industries, getting into careers.
I would, 2 years ago, I would have said no. I would have said 2 years ago, I would have said the broad base of entry level positions is endless and just overflowing with opportunity. I'd say in the last 2 years things have changed. It's harder for entry level folks to secure positions. They've become vastly more competitive. In my historical view of the markets, the mid to high has been the most, and the high being, the sort of the tip, the leadership teams positions. I think those are the most competitive and also the smallest pool of available
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. If you're looking for specialized skills for people to run the business, run a company, it's very different, right? CXOs and VPs, SVPs and such. But down in the broad base, where you're talking about entry level positions, very early career, first year out of college to 5 years out of college into that mid level, which is more about management and then growing up
Mm-hmm.
your career. But in that broad base, I'd say 2 years ago, it was much easier for somebody coming fresh out of college to be able to find a position. They might intern for a year or a summer prior to their senior year of college, and then they secure the position, and then voila, they have a position after spring when they graduate, and then they move in, whether it's in tech or finance or healthcare or whatever it is. And by the way, there are exceptions to this rule. My middle child, he has done his degree in healthcare and health and wellness related. He's got his certifications for emergency medical technician. He can find a job anywhere. There's no issue. There are markets and segments of this market which are bound by huge amount of scarcity for resource, and
Yeah.
those are easier for them. So that, I'd say there are exceptions, but if we go back to tech and we go back to finance and things like that, the larger knowledge worker related, we're not talking about medical, those are definitely harder now. And I would say a couple of aspects here. There is you're tapping into something that's important, which is the obsolescence of certain types of tasks through the
Mm-hmm.
use of automation and AI. I think we're in the early innings there, Joel. I don't think we're ready on that. I don't think that's exactly the problem we have. I think what we are seeing, though, is a use of AI filtering based on fit and experience, and you're not even getting into interviews. So you could
Mm-hmm.
be 1 year out of college, you could have done 3 or 4 internships, you might have had one position that extended into a full-time position, you were there for a year or maybe a year and a half, you're trying to find that next role, maybe you're trying to get a bump of pay, maybe 5-10K or 20 better, you're trying to find a better position with better benefits and incentives, and you're out there in the market. Well, guess what happens? You put everything in your resume that's of concern and everything that's required. You've got all the skills from your university, and it's all packaged nicely, and you've even spent money to generate your resume. It
Mm-hmm.
gets filtered out by the systems using AI. It never even gets to a hiring manager. Oh, by the way, I literally get hundreds to thousands of resumes when I have an open role. I will not
Mm-hmm.
even open 95% of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel guilty about that, saying that, but AI will say none of these people matter.
So two things about that. Number one, and I gotta go look this up, but I've heard that there is companies that post, I think they call them ghost jobs,
Yes,
where they're not actively looking for anyone, but they're posting about
the
jobs
red
and
herring.
roles
They're red
to
herrings.
be able to say to your investors or to the ones that might want to be an
Growth.
investor, here you go, we're looking for 25 people, we're growing like a motherfucker,
Yep. Yep.
give us your money.
That's
Number
exactly
one. Number
right.
two is when I looked for, I don't know if it was this job I'm in right now or the one before. I think it was the one before. I was applying to a few jobs, and then I read an article on a subreddit about how some of these AI softwares work, like what they're filtering
Mm-hmm.
for, what's the first trigger word that where they sort
Yep.
of, it's almost like they're like they said it works like they're going through it, reading the first trigger word that they're looking, and they're just tossing it. No, you could be you could have a doctor in
PhD.
rocket science. If it says the wrong thing at the top, then you're screwed. And so I made my own CV on Canva. I only used certain words, and the layout was that the trigger words are not even there or at the very bottom, so it gets to the hiring manager. And I just, for test, I sent out 100 applications before and then after with
Mm-hmm.
both CVs. With the first version, I had, I think, 20 reached out to me, and then I had like 7 actual interviews. And with the other one, I had 50 come back to me. And then I went into round 2, so the final round, with, I believe it was like 21 or 22 companies. So it
Okay.
was a significant increase in just
Yeah.
adjusting the way the CV looks, which is going to be the same way YouTube tries to work around ad blockers that are built into browsers, and then browsers are building around the new
Yeah.
thing YouTube is doing to sort of
Yep.
get out of the ad blockers there. Like, what's the actual
It's the
point?
moral look, it's the moral equivalent of virus scanning. It's like it's looking for certain things, and if it sees hallmarks of things it doesn't like, it's gonna park it in a garbage bin. If it
But
likes,
as a tangible thing for a hiring recruiter, for a hiring manager, the probability of some, like, because if you want to get through, it requires you being able or having the knowledge or the time to go look up what are those softwares looking for, how can I set up my CV, and if someone is in a job looking for a better one, you're sort of requiring that as an extra thing for the person that's looking for a job to do. And I just think using those softwares, the probability of you losing out on the top talent because they had some fucking trigger word in their first or second line is so high that I would have an issue with using that, because I was like, but what if the next Steve Jobs is in there, and because he had whatever Yale or whatever it is, Carolina, whatever, in their first or second line in their CV, they're not even going to be looked at by me.
look,
That's my point with this.
I get it. I understand that. I appreciate the frustration and the tension on that point. Let me give you a pro tip as a seasoned hiring manager leading well over 25, almost 30 years in the technology sector. When I build a requisition and then subsequently create a job posting for an opportunity, I already have a person in mind. I already know who I want to hire.
Like
I don't I don't create an
like a
opportunity. No, I know the people. I know who I want to hire. I know the archetype of who I want to hire. I know I'm basing this on somebody I know in my network that I
mm-hmm,
want to secure. And by the way, the higher you get in the level, as far as if this was like a manager role or a senior manager role that you're trying to hire for, a director role, a senior director role, running a larger organization, multifunction, and I might need like somebody who can manage a team, drive a strategy, build and drive a strategy. I'm looking for a senior director or a senior or a director level. And those are really, they're going to be good jobs. They're going to pay well. They're going to have incentives and such. I already know who that person is. I literally have had a conversation with that person and said, I'm going to open a role. I really want you to apply. I'm going to build the job rec to fit your skills, capabilities. You are a perfect match.
mm-hmm.
This is how hiring managers think, especially in the more strategic roles in their team. If it's a really large organization, we're talking about hundreds of roles and functions inside of a team, and go to like a more broad-based approach, which is like a sales organization. I need inside sales, SDRs, BDRs. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to spend a ton of time on my personal network going, oh, I know this kid and that kid, and I'm going to hire them right out of Princeton or Yale or whatever to be my salesperson. No, those are going to be done through a recruiter. They're going to be done through job posting. It's going to be a lot more blind than it is visual. I'm not going to have a line of sight on the person I want. But when I'm talking about roles that are more strategic in the organization, I'm going to have that person's name imprinted in my head, and I already have their resume. I know them. I worked with them. They worked for me. So that's the pro tip, in the sense that the hiring managers are going to have a really strong composite of who and what they need. So that's, as an outsider, if you're sitting on the outside of this, and I know this is frustrating, but you have to understand, and you have to, kind of accept that some of these paths are all already predetermined. You see a job rec on a board and you go, man, that would be perfect for me. You need to accept that the hiring manager who placed that job posting already has somebody in mind.
Do you think that there is a sort of a mutual way of solving this issue on both sides, that if you say the employee side is just being flooded with job offers that are really not hiring, or where the probability of you even getting an interview is very low, and then a company like yourself or a hiring manager like yourself getting 1,000 applications for one job, and you're gonna look at 50 maybe because it's just too many.
To be honest, and the people who are applying for these jobs, they could be lower level, and they are effectively they're overqualified, and they're applying for jobs that are beneath them from
Right.
just their historical job history. That's what's frustrating, is somebody that's applying for a senior manager role who's a senior director working for a company and had a really great position. Maybe they were part of a reduction in force or RIF, and now they're on the market. They don't have a job, and they're willing to take something down a couple of levels in order to secure a position to get benefits or whatnot. And by the way, as somebody if you've been involved in a reduction of force, or you've been involved in an acquisition and there's a shedding of the labor force, you don't want to sit around. You don't want to sit on your hands for a year or 2 years. You want to be working, right? And my advice to people who are in that situation is, take consulting roles, take contract to hire roles, because you can sort of try, it's a try and buy, right? Like if they like you, they'll offer you a full-time permanent position. But for you not to be working is not
Mm-hmm.
a good thing. And by the way, on that point, if you can't find contract to perm roles, if you can't secure contract roles, start reaching out to your network and offer your services as a consultant, right? As a contract opportunity to that company. Use your network. And by the way, all these things get cured by
Mm-hmm.
cultivating and leveraging a strong network. If you have access to hiring managers, access to leadership, you have history with these people, you leverage that not only for job opportunities, but you leverage it for recommendations, you leverage it for introductions. And I don't care if you are 2 years or a year out of college, or if you've been in this market for 25 years, the network is where you live and die. If you do not have a strong network of people you can reach out to find opportunity, to find guidance, to be able to be
Yeah.
steered into the right direction, you're at a massive disadvantage.
So here's my question sort of round is out, and this is without a doubt very easily turned into sort of the hen and the egg kind of conversation or discussion. But as I said, companies are doing anything from ghost jobs to getting thousands of applications on jobs and only looking at a percentage of those. And at the same time, people are sort of sometimes desperate finding a job and applying for jobs underneath their qualifications, and maybe even just utilizing their own AI, which just spams applications so that, throw as many darts to the wall as you can so one of them sticks. As from the perspective of a company, of a hiring manager, would you, or is it a point of interest to get as many applications on your job listings as possible? Because at a point, if I would
Diminishing returns.
probably,
Don't want it.
well, if you're a hiring manager and your job is to find the best person for your whatever head of sales job or BDR, SDR, even a higher level, more strategic position, I would argue that probably the understanding is, if I find someone out of a pool of 1,000, the likelihood of that being the best person available is higher than if I just have 50 applicants and find the person that's fit for the
I
role.
would rather have 50 appropriate applicants applying than 950 others that are not appropriate. I'm telling you, as I look through the dashboards when I launch a role, if I will browse through every day, these AI systems, these AI, basically recruitment systems are looking at, they'll give you all the information. They'll say, well, this person is, this person applied yesterday or this week. I'll get a list every day, a digest. I'll go into that list and I'll look. And if I see that those people don't have a relevant competitor in their history, somebody that I compete against that does what we do, I don't even open it up. And it's unfortunate, and I'm expressing regret in some ways by not doing that. But I'm saying, imagine you are trying to run a business. Imagine you have a critical function that's required to drive some component of the business. Imagine that you have to take hours every week out of your normal week to dedicate to reviewing candidates and their applications, and then set up interviews and meet with every one of these. If you had 1,000 people come and you want to do this in a very egalitarian way, you'd say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I have 1,000 applicants. I should meet with everyone. You'd never get through that list. You'd get through 50 in 2 months. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my schedule is so wedged every single day. I literally say that's like a block of cheddar cheese. It's not Swiss cheese. There's no space in it all. I can't find 30 minutes to just find alone time so I can take a walk outside. And I'm working from, 8 o'clock or 7:30. I wake up in the morning. First thing is I check my phone until like late into the evening, 7:30, go to bed, wake up, rinse, repeat. I can't find 30 minutes for myself to get my thoughts together as a leader. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to find, multiple 30-minute slots every week to review applications and to also interview potential candidates that may or may not be qualified. If I don't see a name like Cisco or
Mm-hmm.
Juniper or
Mm-hmm.
Arista in my
Mm-hmm.
list, goodbye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I could see Google in there. I could see Amazon in there. I could see other software vendors. Salesforce doesn't
Still
apply
not
to
doing
me.
it. Right.
It's not directly related to my domain and to my focus area and to the core competency of what we do in the market. I can't waste time. My time is precious. It's
Yeah.
precious for the people in my orbit who need me, right? So my point to you is, And I don't mean to be pessimistic or derogatory about any of this. I will not open up resumes that do not have relevance. And it's like you're saying people just spraying the internet with their resume. That's what
Mm-hmm.
happens. I'm getting applicants from insurance companies. They have an extremely low relevancy to the role. I get people I'll even go north. I'll say I get people who are in certain roles in the companies that I do like, that I do look for, and they're the wrong roles. They worked in
Right.
sales and they want a marketing job. They worked in product management. They worked in support and they want a marketing job. Now, the product management one may work. I've opened those. I've asked for interviews. I've met with those people. They're great at grooming backlogs and building roadmaps, and they don't have any history of building content. They're not creative people. They're not strategic marketers. They understand how to build feature roadmaps, and they get some element of it, but they don't, other elements.
So to sort of round this out, what are some of the best practices to you? What should people consider writing their applications or CVs, and to sort of break that first barrier to even make it to a set of human eyes looking at your CV?
So I'm going to repeat a little bit. I'm going to give you a couple of the new ones. And I'm going to use my son as an example, my oldest son, who just relocated to a new city. He moved to Miami in October, had was a hybrid, but mostly in-person role in Boston. He couldn't keep that role. So when he moved, he made a decision to move to Miami. That's where he wanted to live his life. He had to quit the job he had. He had a very good job. He had a good position. He was performing very well. He went to Miami. He said, "Good dad, I moved in, I got an apartment, and now I need to find a job." It took him 2 months exactly to secure the same kind of position that he had before, same level, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actually turns out to be a better role from a compensation and opportunity beyond that. And he's really happy with it. But it took him 2 months. It
Mm-hmm.
took him the first 35 to 40 days of the 60-day period to go out and hunt and recruit or, advertise himself and go and apply to all the various opportunities he was finding with LinkedIn and Indeed and other job boards. That took him 40 days. At day 40, one of the hundreds of applications came back. He had a high level of relevancy, both on role and industry. It took 20 days with a series of 7 interviews for him to secure the position, and he started after the 20 days.
7.
7
God.
for a job that was requiring 3 to 5 years of experience. Now, let me tell you how he did it. Okay. And this is how I would do it. 1, he leveraged the network. He leveraged his father's network as well. He went out to people that he knew, former colleagues, folks who went to school with in college, people he worked with at the current firm and the last job before that when he had an internship. He went and reached out to all the people he knew. And then he said, "Dad, I'd like to reach out to some of your friends. They have a high relevancy of where I want to be. Can you help me do that?" So I made some introductions, and then he took those forward. Network, that very important. Applying for opportunities. Is there an opportunity that may or not be through the network, but they may know of something, they may refer you, they may introduce you to some other company that you're looking at. 2, when he found a job online that was interesting, that has a high match, his skills matched, his industry was relevant, he applied, he followed up immediately. Not only did he get it, if he got an answer back like, "Yes, we'd be interested," or "No, we wouldn't be interested," he followed up. He also reached out proactively with a personalized note to either the hiring manager or the recruiter. Very good practice, by the way. Anybody who's
Mm-hmm.
applying today, you go to LinkedIn, you find a job, and by the way, look at how many people have applied, because if there's hundreds or thousands that have applied, it's going to be
Don't do
harder.
it. You can even
But it
filter
could
the
be,
ones that don't have a whole lot of applicants by
that's
now.
right.
Yeah.
And also the ones that are newer, right? So it's a brand new role. 25 people have applied. You apply to it. It's relevant to your industry, to your skills, and it's, your capabilities, et cetera. You apply. You go and you look at who is the HR person, one of the recruiters or one of the HR people, or, the hiring manager. It might even list the hiring manager. Get that intel. Go out and do a personalized note. Go add a connection, send a note, say, "I would love to connect with you. I've just applied for the role of XYZ at your firm. I'd love to learn more about the role, but I'd love to learn more about the company and your mission." Even if you have to do a LinkedIn paid message, do it. And then, make it relevant. Give them a little bit of information about yourself. Give them information about your skills and how they apply to the role that they're hiring for. Okay. Then also after, and by the way, include some accomplishments in that outreach, because they want to know you've been there, done that. That's very important. Then once you get the interview and the screen is done and you proceed to the next level where you actually meet people who are going to be, you're either going to be working for or working with. Every single person you meet with, send a follow-up, send a thank you, relate back in that process one or two things that they have said and come up with an angle on how you would accomplish or support that.
Mm-hmm.
The other big important element is not only doing the follow-ups with all the people you meet, but when you get to the interview, bring 2 to 3 really well-crafted questions. Have you ever been in an interview and say, do they have any questions? Do you have any questions for me? If I'm the hiring manager, do you have any questions for me, Joel? And you say, no, I think I've got it all down. No, don't do that. Come back and say, actually, I have 2 questions that I'd like to ask. And I know we only have 7 minutes left in the interview, but question 1 is, you're asking them a question about their business. You're asking them a question about the culture. You're asking them a question about their way of working and how they operate, what their business goals are for the year, and how
Mm-hmm.
this role fits with that goal or that particular strategy. I'm telling you, the more you interact, the more you engage, whether it's in the introductory part where you're trying to find the opportunity, into the interview process, after the interview process, you are signaling to them you are engaged, you're interested, you want this job, and you're capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the pro tips to anybody today who's going to go click on an application and apply in LinkedIn. If you follow these steps, I guarantee you it'll be far more successful than not following these steps.
Absolutely. Amazing. Stephen, thank you so much. Have a blessed Christmas. Hopefully a few rejuvenating and restful days. And I think we'll see each other
We'll see each other in February. Yeah.
In February. Oh yeah. I'll be
in February we'll see each other in person.
In Miami.
But we'll probably see each other before the end of the year on the podcast.
I would say so. Yeah. Everybody that's listening, Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year. In Germany, we say Guten Rutsch, which basically means good slide. Slide well into the new year. I don't know how they came up with that, but that's what we do.
Nice.
Thank you for listening. It's going to be an exciting year of 2026, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe.